I would not be where I am today. I don't think I even would have fought because I would have been afraid that I didn't have what it takes. But that first year of wrestling, I can't thank you enough, and I can't tell you how much that has influenced my life.
I knew that you and Sharon both were coming in, that there was a girl prior to you guys that everyone talked about being a great wrestler. And I saw you, I could see that you're pretty athletic. And I wanted to make sure that when you're in the room, that I wanted to make sure that I built you to be a champion. And I'm not talking about wins and losses, I'm talking about being a champion in life. And I think that being a father of 3 daughters, I wanted to make sure you knew that the road for you is a little different than what it would be for the guys in the room.
You were actually a really integral part of my career. You were a make or break kind of person. Your energy was very much like, you're not gonna bend for anybody, and you either have to rise to the occasion or you're not really meant to be here. I think that makes a great coach.
I think through my life experiences, I've learned a little bit more about social emotional and where people are at and try to meet them where they're at. I was a 27-year-old trying to figure it all out too. I just knew that from my background, I wanted kids to be as prepared as possible. That's what I was trying to do, is push.
I don't know if I have had a more unique guest. He's absolutely been an integral part of the journey that has been mine. And I say that because when I started wrestling, Coach Waite was my wrestling coach. He was all about working us beyond our breaking points. And I know that if it wasn't for wrestling, I wouldn't know how great I can be. It was that first year that really brought my ferocity and tenacity, and would I have ever uncovered it if it wasn't for Coach Waite? I guess without further ado, we are going to get into exactly that. And I really got a peek behind what is it that made Coach Waite tick. I think you're in for some real treats, and it's just a good, genuine conversation. So, as always, thanks for listening, and I really hope that you enjoy this very special and unique episode of the Built for Growth podcast. This episode of Built for Growth is powered by Live On Labs. Their lipospheric supplements ensure maximum nutrient absorption, supporting your health at a cellular level. Use code TATEBC, that's TATEBC, and get a free vitamin B complex when you order vitamin C along with it. I have my recollection of what it was like joining the wrestling team. So Sharon and I were 15 years old, and we obviously didn't get the memo that girls didn't wrestle, right?
Yeah. And so I got to tell you, my superpower is that I'm a father of 3 daughters. Okay. And so I knew that when you're coming in, you and Sharon both were coming in, that there was a girl prior to you guys that everyone talked about being a great wrestler. And I saw you, and I could see that you're pretty athletic. Mm-hmm. And I saw Sharon, and she wasn't quite what I thought she was either, but eventually she won state title too, right?
Yeah.
And I wanted to make sure that when you're in the room, that I wanted to make sure that I built you to be a champion. And I'm not talking about wins and losses. I'm talking about being a champion in life. And I think that being a father of 3 daughters, I wanted to make sure you knew that the road for you is a little different than what it would be for the guys in the room.
That's incredible, because I feel like, my perception at the time was, I don't think that these guys want us here. It really was. And that may have not just you. And I think maybe you were being hard on us because you're like, well, this is what it takes. But with 15 years old, with no other prior experience, never having that, it seemed like, I don't think they want me here. Maybe they thought girls shouldn't belong or didn't wrestle, and maybe some of the guys on the team probably were like, oh, because I know that there had been girls that weren't very serious, right? And you got to weed out male and female, the ones who aren't very serious. We always start with a really big team, right? And then you whittle away and you find who's really got what it takes.
Yeah, I was really interested in champions, and I'm gonna go back to it. It wasn't on the mat, and I know that we talked a lot about wins, right? We wanted to win. We set our goals. We wanted to win. It was really about where are you going to be when you leave school. Life's difficult. Life's a challenge. Yeah. And how are we going to persevere over those? And really, what I wanted to do when I saw you and I saw Sharon, after I started working with you even more and seeing what you're doing, I thought you could be the best person that ever walked the halls of Franklin Pearson Wrestling.
Oh, I wouldn't have left my freshman year thinking that, to be honest, but that is really cool to know, because it's all about perception. And we never really sat down and had a conversation like this. It's those 2.5 hours that you're in training and you're trying to pull the most out of somebody.
Yeah. And I think through my life experiences, I've learned a little bit more about social emotional and where people are at and try to meet them where they're at. I was a 27-year-old trying to figure it all out too. I just knew that from my background, I wanted kids to be as prepared as possible. And that's what I was trying to do, is push so that they could find their greatness, right? Whatever that was.
Yeah.
And I certainly wasn't going to say, hey, Miesha, by the way you drill and your consistency and your tenacity and your determination when I'm putting, a high school All-American, 3-time state placer at you, I'm not going to say, hey, by the way, you can be the best ever when you're a freshman. Maybe a little psychology, just trying to make sure I pushed you as far enough.
Oh, yeah.
So
you did that. You accomplished that.
Yeah.
No, you were actually a really integral part of my career, because I sense that you were a like make or break kind of person. I don't know if I could have like said that at the time, but your energy was very much like, you're not going to bend for anybody, and you either have to rise to the occasion or you're not really meant to be here. And I think like that makes a great coach, I think. But because I wasn't convinced that you were convinced that I should be there, I was like, I'm going to show him. Like you lit a fire under my ass in a way that was like, I don't actually give a flying fuck if he wants me here. Like, I'm going to be here every single day, and I'm going to work harder than all these guys. And I'm not as good, but actually I'm terrible. Like I knew I was terrible. But I was like, but the law of diminishing return, right? I should get better fast. And, you did. You put me in, I think, with Charlie Cook. It was my first wrestling.
Yep.
And oh my gosh.
Yeah.
He just stomped the mat with me. It wasn't even like close. He obviously was very talented.
But I think, Miesha, you got to go back to a champion's not necessarily who you win or who you beat, right? I mean, we've all been in matches where we wrestled someone that wasn't at our level and we're like, oh yeah, we won, right?
Yeah.
A champion's the one that gets their ass kicked and gets back up. That's a champion. That's what I was looking for. That's what I saw when you're a freshman. I'm not going to tell you how great you're going to be, because, what separates the great ones from the other ones is what? Their effort, right? So we had an All-American in the room, and he didn't want to work to be as good as he could have been, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to give you the secrets early.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, did I know where you're going to end up at the end? No.
No.
You did all that work.
Thanks. Well, and at the time, there wasn't a future for women in wrestling.
Mm-mm.
No, I mean, there wasn't a state. That didn't happen until my junior year. That was the first year that there was even, a tournament that was. So, for people listening, this is in Tacoma, Washington at Franklin Pierce High School. And the first year that they had doing air quotes, state wrestling tournament for women was my junior year. So that would have been 2004. And it wasn't exactly state by a long shot of the same way that men's state was, because, men had to go through regionals and they had to go through all the tournaments to like get to state. Women, we didn't have enough. So it was like a round robin tournament during the breaks of the male wrestling, because some people must have noticed that there were enough stragglers of women throughout the state wrestling on male wrestling teams. And that was the first opportunity. Now, I broke my ankle my junior year about 2 weeks before the state wrestling tournament. And I was so bummed, but I did come back my senior year and get it done, get the job done. But no, my freshman year, when you were there and present, that wasn't a thing yet.
Right. Yeah. And I just wanted to make sure that anybody saw you wrestle,
that
they would say, that's the best person.
Yeah.
My goal was to push you as far as I could get you.
Yeah.
As far as I could get you. That was my goal. I remember one time before one of the tournaments, you were talking about how you went home and made like cupcakes with your mom or something. I'm like, hey, we don't do cupcakes, Tate.
Yeah.
I mean, we're serious
Exactly.
here. We're trying to become great.
Yeah, you were a no bullshit kind of person. You were like, that's not what we do. I wish that I had I wish that I had more of the cultural upbringing of wrestling my whole life. Because I think, jumping into it at 15 years old, I'm grateful that I had that. But there was so much that I didn't know about nutrition, about cutting weight, about any of those things. I didn't do camps. Like I only did wrestling in season. My parents couldn't afford to send me, to do this year round. So it's like, it's literally what I looked forward to every year. I could not wait for wrestling season to come around. But, I only wrestled that 2.5, 3 months out of the year. That's it. The rest of the year I was like waiting for it.
Yeah, but we gave you enough work that lasts a lifetime, right? Don't you think?
Yeah. All the bleacher runs and the I went back to Franklin Pierce recently. Have you been back much?
I've been back once.
Once?
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of
So
different.
I went back just recently, and I was there watching one of the girls who was maybe she may have won state, but she didn't end up winning state. But they thought she might have a good chance. And, gosh, forgetting her name right now. I'll think of it. But I went back and watched her, and she mopped the mat with this girl, and she was just incredible. And they're like, no woman from Franklin Pierce has won state since you. And I was like, wow, I didn't know. I didn't know that. That's pretty incredible. But these girls are still like there, and they're leading a charge, and they're still, out there to conquer and be the best in the world. But when I was there watching them wrestle, there was 2 takeaways. One, I thought that the way we used to do it was so much better. Because
the old days.
Because we used to have, like the JV team would come out and warm up, and then the varsity team would come out, and like the lights would go from bright to low, and have that spotlight and the music, and they do this, kind of synchronized warm up. Well, I got to be a part of that later in my career. I would say my senior year, I think. But they didn't do any of that, and I was kind of bummed out. I was like, where's like the theatricals, like the drama, like the lead up, like exciting, kind of getting the crowd ready for that. They didn't do any of that.
Yeah, it was really important to me. I think that when I looked, my background is, if you go back to like adverse childhood experiences, my background is totally off the chart. So I knew how difficult my life was, and I certainly wanted to prepare any kid that ever was in my room to go after whatever they wanted to, because they knew that I knew that some days are good and some days are bad, and and we had to make sure that we prepared them. And what I really focused on was I wanted to give the kids that were like the marginalized kids, the kids that had no voice, the kids that had no, perception of value. I wanted to make sure it was big time for them, so that they could see this was their moment to shine. Yeah. And build confidence that way. And I think we did that.
We did.
Yeah.
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt. And I also was there and remembering how we used to run, like, because we didn't have a wrestling room.
That's right.
We didn't have a wrestling room. So it was up in the top of the bleacher stands, like how do you describe that? What is that level? There's like
it's like a balcony. Yeah.
Yeah. There's like this balcony. And so on one side, every day we'd have to push, collapse all the seats in or over the wall. And then we'd roll out the mats, and then we'd have to put them away after every single practice. And then we would run. Or maybe we didn't put them away after every practice. I can't remember. Did we have to put them away after every practice? I don't remember if we did.
No, I think we left them.
We left them? Yeah, we might have left them. But anyways, I remember remember how we used to have to carry the mats manually and everything when we'd have the matches and think now they have it so easy. They roll them out. And but I was saying about the conditioning rounds. I remember running the circles around the gym. So you'd run up to the balcony, you'd run through it, and then you'd run down the little canal, the little stairways, and then you'd run through the gymnasium to the other door, and it was like a repeat on that side. They like mirrored each other, and we would just run those over and over and over and over. And I was looking at that, and I was like, gosh, what a trip. That was the memories. Like people will, that generation will never remember what it was like to just, we I don't know. It was a different grind because we didn't have the amenities, right? We didn't have access to a lot of stuff. So I wouldn't
have given them to you anyway.
You probably wouldn't have.
Because it's the hard way. The hard way is what makes it reward, right? It gives you the reward. It's all the things that I wanted to make sure that when life is difficult again, is to make it so that you could reflect back on Franklin Pierce wrestling and go, oh, this can't be more difficult than a wrestling practice. For God's sakes, I can do this. Yeah. I can close my eyes. I can see the light. I can make this happen. I can make it better. I'm okay. I can do this. And let me tell you, they were hard. And in fact, the school told me, I'd make you guys, I don't know if you remember, but we'd run up the bleachers and run back, and then we'd do towel pushers for fun, just for shits and giggles. But then we'd put someone on your back, and you have to carry them up and down the bleachers, and they said I couldn't do it. We did it anyway, but still, all the good
Back
fun
in the
stuff.
Day.
Yeah, trying to build champions, right?
Yeah. No, I remember all of it. That was crazy because it was just so intense. And you know what? That has always stuck with me too, because I remember I remember one fight specifically. I think it was the one against Marlus Kunin. I remember thinking, I can do anything for 5 minutes. And I still think that now. Like, I could do anything in the world for 5 minutes. There's no, 5 minutes can't break me. At any point in my life, I can do anything for 5 minutes, and sometimes it's that simplification, but just knowing that you've done more over those hard training sessions, over those practices. And now you're going to bring it down to that 5 minutes of that round of fighting. It's that 5th round or it's that 3rd round. It's the final round of your fight. And you have 5 minutes left to lay it all on the line. Right?
Yeah.
One of my favorite things about hosting the Built for Growth podcast is being able to bring you my favorite supplements and companies that I love working with, because if I don't use it, you don't hear about it. So I'm going to talk today about Live On Labs, because they have revolutionized the supplement industry with their lipospheric products. They utilize liposomal encapsulation technology, and this helps deliver nutrients directly to your cells for optimal absorption. Some other supplements could potentially not deliver the nutrients safely through the digestive tract just because of the way that it's extracted and then capsulated. Sometimes we're not getting as much as we think we are when we take, a daily multivitamin or whatnot. But Live On's liposomal delivery system protects the nutrients through the digestive process, and that ensures that you get the full benefit from the vitamins like C and glutathione. Glutathione's one of my favorites, although it is the roughest one to take. I raw dog these, so I just take the little packet. It's like a little gel, and you kind of just take it straight out the packet and down the hatch. But you can mix them with juice or however you like to take them if you don't like the whole raw dogging thing. But these supplements support immune function, they promote healthy skin, and they aid in detoxification. And they're also non-GMO, sugar-free, gluten-free, and vegan-free. And if you use code TATE, BC, that's TATE, BC, you get a free B complex when you buy vitamin C. And I highly recommend you throw a glutathione in there because it's great for your brain. But either way, I think you will fare well with vitamin C and B, because that's going to be great for your immune system, and you'll get to try the product out and up your wellness routine. So I recommend it. Use code TATEBC at checkout and get that free B vitamin complex.
It goes back to that, though. That's where it all started. I think I never may have known what I'm capable of and how tough and resilient I am had it not been for wrestling.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And you're in the right environment, right? You're around a bunch of kids that needed a voice, needed someone to believe in them, needed some confidence. And that's what we did. We delivered it in a hard way. And the only way to get there is through hard work and discipline. And look what happened.
How long had you been coaching at that point?
So my first year at Franklin Pierce, I taught or coached 3 years prior to that.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was influenced by a lot of great mentors. And so I kind of had a passion and knew what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it. And then I took, of course, my adverse childhood experiences. I wanted to make sure that no matter what, these guys are going to be champions. I'm going to show them how to do it. And a lot of people, I'm not talking about just wrestling, but just in life, right?
Yeah.
Champions in life and what they've gone on to do.
Well, it worked in one case that I can think of.
Yeah. I think there's lots of them, when I look back, Jeremy Cash was like a JV guy, a regular guy, maybe had a few more matches that he won before he was a senior, a senior year. He won a few more than he lost. And I stayed in contact with him a little bit, and Coach, it's a tough one. I have ALS, and he shows me how he's making someone's life brighter in his wheelchair and not giving up. That's a champion. That's what I built. That's what we built together.
Yeah.
That's what I was talking about. Yeah,
for.
It's not about the wins in the wrestling room or in the octagon. It's
Yeah.
how you live your life. There's so many examples of the kids at Franklin Pierce that did that. It's just beautiful. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it brings joy to my heart.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. Okay. What made you want to be a wrestling coach, and why were you such a hard ass? You're breaking it down now, but I don't know if you're like me anyways, in my 20s, I didn't have as much forethought or perspective on why I was the way that I was, or, now I sit back and I reflect and say, oh, that makes sense because this kind of led me to that point. But at 27, were you just what you were, or did you think about what the reasons were that made you have that kind of drive and determination and desire to want to change these kids' lives?
I think it all goes back to the mentorship that I had. I was really fortunate. Sid Otten was my head football coach. He's in the State Hall of Fame for coaching football. John Burbeck had a big influence on me. He's in the National Hall of Fame for wrestling.
Yeah.
My father-in-law, Pat Alexander, I grew up since I was 6 years old as a wrestling guy, had a huge influence on me. He had the greatest influence on me. He's since recently passed away, but certainly he had a huge influence on me. He was kind of a drill sergeant, disciplined guy. You're going to do it by the book, and this is how it's done. So that's kind of how I did it. And I just felt like through discipline and consistency over time, you get success in any platform.
Yeah. What was your wrestling career like? What age did you start? And what'd you do?
That's great. I was about 6 years old when I started. Wrestled for a few years. Didn't wrestle my freshman year. I only weighed 98 pounds.
Oh, gosh.
Wrestled
You're
my
tiny.
sophomore and junior year. Was okay, like a JV type guy. Didn't wrestle my senior year. I didn't want to put in the work and then lose. Had a fear of failure.
Fear of failure.
Yeah.
It's a real thing.
It's a huge thing. And so one of the things I want to make sure when I started coaching is that they're going to be prepared as possible and then let it rip, right?
Yeah.
Just get them as prepared so that they had confidence when they went out there. I didn't think I had the confidence to do it.
Wow. What do you think now? What do you look back at that? What would your words be to that younger you that had the fear of failure?
I think that failure gives you a chance to learn and grow, right? Again, goes back to the champions or people that get themselves up each day, right? So
Yeah.
if I lost, that doesn't define me. A win doesn't define me in a wrestling room or in a match.
Yeah.
It's what I do outside. So it defines me.
I say that all the time to myself, actually. I do it. It's a great way to take the pressure off. I tell myself that now. I was just on a hike with a friend of mine, and she was like, how do you deal with a loss or even the thought of it? And I said, well, you know what I really boiled it down to is that does not define me. This one loss doesn't define me. It is how I show back up every time, before that and after that. And not just in the arena or on the mat, but in my life. Do I let that loss be the moment that says, this is my value? Or do I take that loss and say, well, that sucked. I don't like it. It's not what I worked for. It's not what I deserve. I think I deserve to win. I work hard. But it's life. It's what happens. And it also has value. Right?
Oh, 100%. I think you learn in every opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Whether you win or lose. Like I said, you could go out and fight someone that's not, and I'm not a UFC person, right? So, but you could go out and fight someone and not be your best, highest performance and win.
Yes.
Or you can just do everything right. And at the end, somehow, some way, it just didn't work out.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you're not a success. It doesn't mean you're not a winner,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
The championship's all the stuff you put into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's it hits the nail on the head for me. And so that's kind of what I think about. It's like, well, if I strip all that away, like it doesn't change who I am at the end of the day. Like I still get to go home to my kids and my fiance and my parents and my family and my friends, and the character of who I am remains the same. Right? I'm still going to have that resiliency. I'm still going to have that tenacity. I'm still going to have that grit. And we're meant to have losses. I think it's just it's an integral part of the learning process,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, if you're not making some losses in there, then you're not trying hard enough because, you're just setting the bar low. You got to push past the bar. You can always do 40% more than what you think you can in any realm, right? Whether I'm in the swim pool, lifting weights, running today, right? Whatever it is, I can always do more, and I got to push myself to be the best I can be.
Yeah.
And yeah.
That's where I learned that actually, that I had way more to give than I originally thought, because it was always in the wrestling room that, you would break, quote unquote, you would be where you absolutely thought there's no way you're going to make it through the rest of practice. You're just like, you're telling yourself like, it's not telling yourself, but it's just like your body's like warning you, like you don't have anything more to give. Like that's it. And it just pops in your head. And then you have to choose whether you accept that or you override it. Right? In the wrestling room, you have to override it. Yep. You have to go anyways. You have to do more than you think you're capable of. And at the end of it, it's like, whoa, I didn't know I could do that.
Yeah, it's all intentional to push you beyond your boundaries, right? We all want to put ourselves in a safe comfort. Even our internal dialogue that we have with ourselves is It's trying to protect us.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh no, we're not going to protect you. I'm going to put you out there and you're going to make it happen. I don't know if you remember. Did you remember the 26-minute pit drill that we used to do at the end of practice for wrestlers? Do you remember that?
I don't know.
We would wrestle live 6 minutes on your feet, and then 6 minutes on the bottom, 6 minutes on top.
Yes.
And you had fresh guys coming at you every 20 seconds.
Yes.
And then you had overtime, and then you had double overtime. And then if you couldn't get out of the bottom, you had to stand there until you got out.
Yep.
And let me tell you, there's some great wrestlers that had a lot of tears, but they pushed themselves beyond their limits.
Yeah.
Right? Because most people would say, I'm done after 6. Well, I got to believe that the people that wrestled in that room can go as long as it takes. Whatever it takes. They're going to make it happen.
Whatever it takes.
Whatever it
Yes.
takes.
Oh, I love it. I'm so pumped up. This is getting me so excited. So I'm fighting on May 3rd, and I feel like this is like a great pep talk. I'm like, keep going. Like, this is great. I think for me, there's so much that I draw back to my wrestling career. And, I chose to make a career out of another sport that's very individual. Very much you go out there, you prepare with a team, but you go out, as the lone wolf to defend. And it's all that's, inside the mind that, you're capable of more than what you know. Like, you don't even know where the end is, actually. It's just not a real thing, right? That you just keep going and you persevere. And no matter what, if you get knocked down, you're going to get back up.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's where it's at. At our school at North Thurston, I have a cross because religion is really important to me. And then I have a couple pyramids of where I'm at, right? So I can see where I'm at every day and I reflect. And then I have an acronym, BOBFA, right? Today, am I going to be a bitch or just a beast? And then I always want to fuck average. So whatever that is, wherever I'm going to be in that moment, we're going to make it happen. And you don't know your limits, so you're just going to push yourself beyond the limits and just make it happen, right?
So where are you at right now?
North Thurston High School.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great.
Teach special ed and don't coach anymore. And
you don't coach anymore?
No.
I
gave it up a couple years ago. I was coaching the girls team, helped start the girls program there. It was great. You would be shocked at how I coach.
Have
the social emotional piece.
I would love to come by sometime and just see.
I'd love to see it, show you the room and stuff. It's great. What I did better was I wanted to make sure that the female athletes that wrestled for us knew that they were loved whether they won or lost. I think there's so much tied up into that and so much with keeping the score. And if they won, great. If they didn't, I still loved them the same. It didn't matter to me. And that was kind of the message we had. And we had a lot of great wrestlers there that did some good things. And it's been a blast.
Do you feel like that's kind of rounded out as you have grown through life? Because I think it's very easy to define winning with a scorecard, right? It's really, that's I guess the, on paper definition. But I think as you grow and you learn more perspective, which is hard sometimes to infuse into these young athletes because they get tied up at their value, their worth is whatever that determination is in that what do I say? Not determination, but the outcome, whatever the outcome also determines their identity, their value, their worth. I feel like a lot of young athletes struggle with this. I know that I did for a while, not when I was wrestling so much because I was so used to getting my ass kicked. Like, let's be honest. Like, a win for me was giving up 5 points and not 6. That was a win for me. That was
but
a
wasn't
big
it
win.
Beautiful when you did that?
It was. I was so proud of myself.
Yes.
So it really, I couldn't be about winning very much because I was wrestling these monster men. And gosh, my senior year, I was wrestling on varsity. Like, what? And it really, it's not because I was that great or I worked hard. There's a lot of people that worked hard, but it wasn't super talented. I wasn't super special. I just showed up every day and I worked hard. But I was not good enough to be on a male varsity team at 152. Let's just put it that way. Or 145. But it was myself and Leif Woldseth, who he was the team captain at the time. And we would both weigh in at 145. And then they would choose who would wrestle 45 and who would wrestle 152 because we didn't have a 152 pounder. And so a lot of times I got bumped to 52. I think what would happen is they would most likely assume I'm a loss either way. Well, that's fair. Okay. So what are the best chances of getting the team to win? Let's let Miesha's L anywhere she goes. So let's give Leif the best chance, the the better matchup for him so that hopefully he can, get 6 back for us. So I would just go out there and just get just smashed. But I got really good at not getting pinned. I mean, I got really good at it. Cause that's, the one thing that I could do. It was I probably wasn't going to take these guys down. I wasn't better. I wasn't faster. I wasn't stronger. I wasn't more experienced. But I had a lot of, tenacity and drive, and what they couldn't do is get, flip me over easily. Right.
It's a champion mindset.
Yeah.
You won. You have a champion mindset. It's what it's all about. It's not the wins and losses. It's about the mindset you bring every day to the table. What you're going to do for your family, right?
Yeah.
What you're going to do for your career, what you're going to do for other people, the gratitude that you show.
Yeah.
That's what it's about.
Yeah.
I just use wrestling as a platform.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now you said at that age that you were really interested in champions. And so I'm curious when that started to integrate for you into more than just, that definition of, champion has to win on paper, right? I mean, there's a mindset you said about being a champion, but I'm curious, at 27, did you have the perspective that you had now? I mean, I know you want championship mindsets, but I think you also wanted to produce the best, produce champions. So how has that evolution kind of changed for you, or has it changed over time?
Great question. Yeah, I think it's probably changed. I'm a lot softer now than I was, for sure. Back when I was at Franklin Pierce, I wanted to certainly change the culture of wrestling at Franklin Pierce. It was dynamite in the early 80s, kind of faltered off, not criticizing anyone. And then when I went in there, I knew that the kids wanted to win. And in my way, how I do it, you better win quick, because if you don't, you're going to lose the entire room. So we had to do things really quick and make sure that we're winning on the mat, and then also trying to produce them and make sure that they could win in life as well.
Yeah.
But the message at the end is really about winning in life.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I think so too. I mean, I think it all comes full circle, but I think what I'm picking up on, though, is that you had a major evolution in, you put so much pressure on yourself to not lose that you had fear of failure that actually held you back from even competing. So at one point in your life, you lacked the perspective that you have now. Yeah. You didn't even want the opportunity to experience it in case you lost, which meant you were a loser, right? And that diminished your quality of life. And then you going through this, and I found this so interesting since I've been texting you. I feel like I've gotten a totally different vibe from you. Not that you ever lost, your passion and drive and desire, but you are more comprehensive, I guess now. I think you look at things with a bigger lens, which is the goal, right, in life. Yeah. We want to kind of, we honed in for a little bit, and then as we gain more life and more perspective, we can kind of look at things with a broader lens and take more into consideration. So would you be able to take me possibly through this young Coach Wait, you weren't a coach yet, fear of loss, letting it rule your life. You didn't understand maybe the value of just mindset, but you actually were tied to an outcome, to, coaching and still being a bit hard, to now where you're like, look, it is all about what you do outside of it and your mindset inside of it.
Yeah. I think every day you got to try to, you live to learn, right? We've got to learn every day in some capacity. When I was a kid, low self-esteem, low self-image, no confidence, all those things, right? Thought that my performance determined who I was as a person, my value. So, win the state title as a senior in football, and you're like, oh, I'm done. I don't have to take the risk and put it out there. That's the young Coach Wade. And then, or young athlete. As a coach, I wanted to change that, flip this script. I wanted these guys to see success. I wanted to build champions. I wanted to build resiliency. I wanted to do all those things. And as I got older, I think that I started to get into more of the social emotional stuff. My wife's a doctor. She's a superintendent. She's got her doctorate. I did her doctorate on social emotional learning. My daughter has severe anxiety. And so I learned a lot about it and how I could be a better person. And so a lot of the things that I try to do now is to try to push people towards, when you're backing up on the train and it's going bad and your life's going bad, how do you switch to neutral, right? Get to neutral. And what do we do? What's that look like for us? And so I work with my kids in my classroom on that, and then how to push forward, right?
That's fascinating.
reset your goal and then finish. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of where I'm at now. But yeah, I was probably more driven back then, but now I've got more perspective, right?
Right.
Yeah, for
And-
sure.
And more perspective doesn't mean less driven. I think it means that you have more routes to find success.
Absolutely. I think, I think when I was younger, I think a younger Coach Waite would say, although I had great mentorship, I would say that the world was according to Coach Waite. And what I've learned through my therapist and all those things, right? Everyone should have a therapist, is that I'm just a small part in everyone's play. And what am I going to do to help them become better? Because my perspective isn't the only perspective you need to have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why did you ever have low self-esteem? Like, what do you think contributed to that? What was your childhood like?
Abuse, neglect,
Yeah.
all the things. Yeah. If you looked at a child adversity, I probably shouldn't be here. I probably should be a drug addict, sitting on the side of the road doing things that you shouldn't be doing. And so athletics got me out of it. It was a tough childhood. In fact, I only drink out of bottles of water, and I know that you don't do that. But I was telling someone, my example is I drink out of a toilet. That was my water source. So
Wow.
tough life. And so I wanted to make sure that I transitioned that so that kids in my wrestling room knew that whatever they hit, that they could make it through it. And I was going to use wrestling as that platform. Yeah, I used my background for that.
Sports save lives.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
Yep.
So-
And it's that one individual. They don't have to be even a great coach, right? I wasn't a great coach. I just showed up every day. And it's that one individual that shows that you care and that you push them to limits that they didn't see that they could have. And great things happen for people.
But you changed lives. Yeah, you did. I mean, you did. You set me on a certain trajectory. And that I don't think I would have had if I had walked into the wrestling room and it had been easy, I wouldn't have been interested. I know that because the only reason I was so infatuated was it was the hardest thing I'd ever done in my life. I had never experienced something like that.
Yeah, I don't know if most kids in Washington State experienced a room like that. I got to be honest. It was an Iowa wrestling style. I love their style, in your face, aggressive, tough, relentless. Win or lose, we're going to make you sore. We were getting after you. And that was the room we had, the environment. Unity camp, for gosh sakes. Guys are throwing fists at each other because they're so competitive. I love that environment. Competition.
Yeah.
Love competition.
Who was it that you mentioned earlier that has ALS? That had ALS?
Jeremy Cash. Yeah,
Jeremy Cash.
he passed away.
He passed away.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to get in his corner that last moment. I wanted to be in his corner, but they kept moving it. But his perspective on what he did was, still trying to raise the spirits of other people. That's a champion. You look at Mitch Brummett, has 5 kids.
Yeah,
He's out there
I
working
remember
every
Mitch.
day, putting stuff in there. He's a champion, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we just got to keep it in perspective. It's not on the mat, although he won a lot of matches.
Yeah.
It's not what it's about. It's the other stuff.
It is.
Yeah.
I've followed Steve Gleason for quite some time now. He was from Spokane, Washington. Are you familiar with him? He's a
Yes.
football player. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. He has ALS, but just a warrior in all the ways. No white flags. It's the same kind of mindset, I suppose, and just goes to show how powerful that is. And you really can harness it. You really can understand what you're capable of.
Oh, absolutely. And it's that friend that's inside of you trying to protect you. But you got to realize that you got to push through that. In fact, before I came in on the podcast, had a couple texts. This is not my realm, which you knew. And I had to make sure, they texted me to let me know that they loved me. And that way, if it didn't go well, I still knew I was loved, right?
Yeah.
And so, you got to always try to make sure your mindset's right and see where you're at in your inner talk, self-talk, and
Yeah.
how are you going to do that? Garbage in, garbage out, right? So we want to positive energy and try to bring that in.
Do you talk about your childhood much? Is it something that you
I
openly?
do. I'm pretty open with my students in my class. I actually use my childhood. I use the ACE. I used to give a quiz. Now we're not allowed to do that for kids. But I give them the information so that they have it, so that if there's a classmate or a friend that's had a difficult child, they can look at perspective of how they can help them. Or if it's themselves, that they're not alone. They do have a voice and that they do matter.
Yeah.
And then I try to use that to help them to work with other people. So our world will be a better place. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Were you raised by your mom? Were you raised by your dad?
Yeah. So it's really complicated. But yeah, I was adopted when I was older. Yeah. And so it's pretty intense, pretty difficult, but I survived. Right. And I'm better for it. You know, I look at all those things and you could say, oh, the neglect, the abuse, the physical abuse, the sexual abuse, all those things. But all the great things I do for people because of it far outweighs it. And I don't think that God gives you more than you can handle. And for some reason, I was the guy that he thought could handle it.
Yeah. Well, you have, and you've used it, I think, to better other people's lives. And that's, I think, the purpose of it all. I think when we go through those hard times, it's not just for us, you know, it's so that we can pass it along and help other people. Because I feel like that's the most rewarding part of life. I feel like that's just such a big purpose in life. If you're not using what you have, if you're not really being the hands and feet of God, you know?
Yeah.
If you're not doing that, I mean, if you're struggling from depression, if you're like going through those hard times, I believe, you know, for what it's worth, that sometimes those people haven't seen their ability, like their value in all of that to make the change and to help other people. Because when you start to do that, you realize that, okay, like there was purpose in my suffering, right? There's a silver lining to it all. There's something that I can do to better other people for my experiences. And I think once you find that, you figure that out and you find the value in that, then it makes your world bright again.
You've
right?
won.
Yeah.
When you figure it out, you've won.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All of your life experiences, whatever they are, good or bad.
Yeah. How did you get into wrestling at 6 then?
I got a flyer actually at
Okay.
my elementary school. It said wrestling, and I showed up, and there it was, and it was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, my coach was the same coach. He's now my father-in-law, so it was kind of interesting. And so I had a relationship with my father-in-law for, 45, almost 46 years, something like that. Yeah.
Oh, but at the time he wasn't your father-in-law.
Oh, no. Obviously I wasn't married when I was 6, but yeah. He ended up being my father-in-law.
Oh, okay. But yes. Okay. Oh, I don't know what I was thinking. I was thinking father-in-law was like married your mom. That's not right.
No.
Yes. Okay. So his daughter ended up being
My
your
wife.
wife.
Yeah, his stepdaughter's my wife.
Stepdaughter. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. That really came full circle for you.
It's beautiful.
Didn't
Let
it?
me tell you, all the lessons he had, I was a front row seat.
Mhm.
He recently passed away a couple months ago,
Oh.
and it was beautiful. I was with him at the
Yeah.
end. It's absolutely beautiful. You go from a strong man, and I remember in those practices, I look up at the wall and it said, "If it is to be, it is up to me." I didn't know if I was going to get home and get beat or get whatever it was, but I knew once a week I could go in that wrestling room and see where it's at. And he was just a light of my life, and so all the lessons he gave me, right? He's a National Hall of Fame wrestling coach, Pat Alexander. Yeah.
Pat Alexander.
He was in our room sometimes. I don't know if you remember, but he just gave me every life lessons and gave me an opportunity to make mistakes. And when I made mistakes, he was right there in the corner with me. So it was, it's great. I owe everything to him. Yeah, absolutely.
Coaches are so influential, I feel like, because in a sport, it is some of the most raw, intentional, vulnerable moments that can really define our character and perseverance for the rest of our lives. And coaches get a first, like a front row seat to that. And it's not even just a seat because they're actively partaking in it. But I think about how influential my coaches have been in my life. And that's why I wanted to find you again. I wanted to get in contact with you because I wanted you to know what a difference you made. Yeah. I wanted you to know that.
I think you might have given me more than I gave you. Yeah.
Well, I hope so. I hope that you did. I hope that I was able to deliver on that aspect,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's not about the other stuff that you do. It's just who you are as a person that makes me incredibly proud.
Well, thank you.
Fills my heart with a lot of joy. And I'm old now, so I can cry, right? I have granddaughters and a grandson.
For
and
sure.
I was like, please don't cry online. But certainly, I think the greatness of coaches is where your athletes are 20 years after they graduate, 30 years after they graduate, 40 years after they graduate. Did you do a good job? And when I look back, I can say, I did okay.
Yeah.
But they did the work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
they
you can
did
lead
the
a horse
work.
to water, but you can't make them drink, right?
Yeah.
It sure helps if you give them the tools, though.
Yeah. A couple times I might have tried to drown them, though.
Well, I mean, that's fair to say. I feel like I was drowning in those first few weeks for sure. I was like, I don't think they want me here. I remember thinking that.
But I wanted you to be the best.
Yeah.
You deserved it. Mm-hmm. You stepped in the room. You're an elite group. I thought the most elite group was the one at Franklin Pierce in the wrestling room. And you wanted to be a part of it. And I had an obligation to push you beyond your limits. And then put on top of that I'm a daughter or a father of 3 daughters. I had that perspective. Your life's going to be a little different than everybody else because it's just how it is.
Yeah. How old were your daughters at that time?
Oh gosh. So one was probably 1.
Oh, they were little.
2 and 4.
Okay.
Probably.
So
Yeah,
quite
they
a
were
bit
little.
younger.
4 or 5. Yeah.
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 So
Yeah, they were
maybe in
little.
their 20s now?
Yeah. So one's 30, one's 28, one's 27.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. They'd hang out and yeah.
Little.
Yeah. But I wanted to make sure that you guys had everything you needed.
What was your thought at the time about women wrestling at all? I don't want you to be like candid and honest because I'm sure it probably has evolved and changed or whatnot. But at that time, it just wasn't a thing that it wasn't widely accepted. And I like that fact, actually. I like that it wasn't everybody thinking that it was the cool thing to do, because it was doing something that was against the grain. Most people didn't understand and most people wouldn't get behind. So I know I just asked you a question, but I'm going to give you a little bit more context here. When I started wrestling, Sharon and I were sitting in English class and she was like, do you want to go out for wrestling? And I was like, they don't have a girls wrestling team. Like, what do you mean? We can't do that. Like, so it was just like totally her idea. And we had just finished cross country. We had, been good friends all through middle school and I loved sports, but I played soccer, volleyball, track, I think in middle school. And then the seasons change when you get to wrestling and it's only women's basketball. And that is just the one sport that just has never done anything for me. I just don't enjoy it. I'm not good at it and it's not fun for me. Now I wasn't any better at wrestling, clearly, but it did something for me. And so anyways, she's like, do you want to go out? And I was like, we can't. And she was like, well, it turns out that if they don't offer a women's sport like wrestling, if they don't have a women's team, we can go out on the guys' team. I was like, I'm like, well, okay. Let me go ask my mom. And I went home and I asked my mom and she was like, I don't think you're going to like that. And I was like, well, babe, but can I just try? She's like, look, I'm not going to tell you can't try. It's like, but I don't think you're going to like it. And we're definitely not telling your dad.
Smart move.
Yeah. I don't think my dad would have been too keen on it. He wasn't actually ever too keen on it. But once I was already in deep enough, there was no pulling me out of it. So I think my mom kind of was hoping that it would be something I showed up, tried, and was like, yeah, it's not for me. But I showed up and you absolutely kicked our asses. And I was like, I remember that first day after wrestling going back to the locker room and with Sharon, and we were both kind of like deer in headlights, just like looking at each other like, what just happened? Like, what did we just do? What did we just sign up for? But we were both hooked. And, we kept coming back every day. And I just was like, there was something so rewarding in thinking that I couldn't do something that I just did more than I thought I was capable of. So, gosh, I'm trying to circle back to what even the question was. Yes. What were your thoughts about women coming out on a wrestling team? Because this is a man's like mat. Like this is not, this was not time for cuteness, not games, no flirting, no grab ass, no nothing. And there was no women's wrestling. So it was like, what are you doing here? Like it had to be a little bit of, I mean, to be honest, it had to be a little bit of like, what are these girls doing here? Was it any of that at all? Like, oh, these girls, like they don't understand how hard this is going to be. They're going to quit. Like they're not going to be. Was there any of that?
Yeah, probably a little bit. Probably. I was probably thinking, oh, I hope they know what they're coming into because this old guy's not going to give it to you soft.
Yeah.
And
so you're not going to bend the rules for the girls.
I'm not going to bend the rules. And I've got some daughters and I know how difficult life can be for women, right?
Yeah.
We can talk about that in society, how it is for women. One of my good friends is a basketball coach. I think her team in basketball was 29-2 this past season. Hasn't lost a match or a game in 3 years in her league.
Yeah.
And didn't get one vote for coach of the year. And all the coaches that opposed her are all male coaches. I knew what life was going to be like for the girls that were in my room.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make sure that I was going to prepare you the best I could. I could have, made it easier. I just didn't think that was the way to get you where you needed to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh, looking at it now with what you just said, I think from my perspective, I thought that you were probably dismissive of us in the way like, oh, these girls don't know what they're, they didn't get the memo. They don't belong here. They don't know, that was mine. But hearing you talk now, I think what I realize is that I don't think you gave a shit actually about like whether we were male or female. It was just kind of like, okay, well, just so you know, like I'm not making this any easier for you because life isn't going to be.
Yeah, it's going to actually be harder in so many ways for you.
Yeah.
Right. And so that was one of the things I wanted to do. And then, and the other part is oh gosh, I lost my train of thought.
That's all right. We can circle back to it. No, so I was saying that, I thought from my perspective at 15 that you had this preconceived notion about women on the wrestling mat. We didn't belong because you put me in there with like wrestlers that were so clearly so much better than me. And I never, you weren't somebody who was like on the first day, second day, third day, fourth day. I was kind of like, can you like teach me like something? Like I wanted to stay after. I wanted to like learn what the hell, like what is that? What did I do wrong? And to my best recollection, I don't remember you being like, yeah, I'll stay after with you or whatnot. Not at first, but I think it's because you maybe wanted to make sure that that we had what it took to even get to the point where we would have been, worth the time of extra. And I think what I was going to say about that though is my perspective on it was he probably thinks girls don't belong here and that this is going to be a waste of time and they didn't really get the memo. And then we circled into hearing your perspective now. What I realize is that I don't think that you cared whether we were male or female. And you're like, I'm just not going to make this easier for anybody because life isn't going to be.
Exactly.
Right. And so I think, I'm just so glad to have your perspective on some of this because I've been wondering this for so long.
Oh, you should have called me. I would have totally told you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm glad we get to have this moment here, but I never, I never had contact with you other than outside of that. I didn't have a number. I had to hunt it down and find you.
Yeah, I'm pretty stealthy. Yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
It's just my thing. I just try to do the best I can and let people live their lives how they want to live them, right? That's important, whatever that is. And if they need me, they'll call me.
Did you follow my career?
I followed it a little bit. I knew a little bit about you.
Yeah.
Again, I'm a father of 3 daughters. I will say I didn't give a shit whether you're a girl or a boy in the room. You're all going to do the same. However, I wanted to make sure I don't like it when you would get hurt, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the thing for me. Females getting hurt is just one of those things. It really bothers me. I don't give a shit if Matt Malian broke his nose or broke his leg.
Right.
But, Miesha or Sharon or anybody else that was a female wrestler for me, I care.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I have snippets of your career and what you've done and what you've accomplished because you've accomplished amazing things. But I don't really watch your fights because of it. Now, if you came out and said, hey, the fight in May is my last one, old Coach Waite's going to find a way to be in that Carver Hawkeye Arena if that's where you're going, right? Wherever that is that you're going to go.
I think it would be the Wells Fargo Arena.
Okay, there we go. Yeah. If it was your last, I would find a way to be somewhere in that area to see what you can do, right?
Yeah.
But
anyone at this point.
I just care so much about people, and I know what they put into it. I just don't want them to get hurt.
Right.
And
so it's probably hard to watch. Would be difficult for you, challenging for you emotionally to watch me go into battle and get banged up and right.
Yeah.
I'm assuming.
Yeah. A lot of anxiety.
Yeah.
Yeah. I probably couldn't coach you.
You and my dad could sit next to each other and wallow in your anxiety because he shares all the same feelings.
Does he? Yeah. Yeah. I love the warrior. I love all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Beast in you, right? But the part of anybody getting hurt, especially someone I know, is overwhelming for me. Yeah.
I can empathize with that because I think of it as a mother, like if my children were doing it, right? Like that. And then I also, I love and appreciate masculinity. I love it. I think men who are real men get a really bad rap these days. And it's like, man, masculine energy is amazing. And when you have like a man who's really solid in his manliness, but is flexible, like has a bit of emotional flexibility, I think it's just such a beautiful strength. Because I believe when you have good masculine energy, then a woman can fall more comfortably into her feminine energy. And so back in my childhood, I don't feel like I always had consistent, secure masculine energy growing up. And I think that when you have a strong woman who doesn't necessarily feel like they have the support of the strong masculine energy, they will try to become that. And I think that's kind of my story, where it's like, oh, okay, well, I didn't exactly have it. And this isn't, my biological father didn't really come into the picture till I was like, I didn't even know about him until I was 5 years old. And then my dad, who raised me from like 3 years old, my dad, that's my dad. We just went through a period of time where we didn't understand each other. We didn't get along from about 13 to 16, I would say. I don't know if we spoke at all, like at all.
Wow.
Yeah, we would pass each other in the hallway and we would just both awkwardly like turn sideways so we could get past each other and just like, no, like nothing. And, it hurt. It definitely was hard for me. I didn't understand it, but it was like, well, if I don't have it, I'll become it. And that wasn't a conscious thought at that time. But I think that's part of what drew me to wrestling was that I don't need this strength from you. I'll find it in myself. And it's beautiful that, that we can do that. But I will tell you, I went through like a 9-year relationship that was very toxic. I think I was perfectly primed for that. And then I met my fiance now, Johnny. And I just love his masculine energy, because although I have already found a home in fighting and whatnot, I don't know if that would have been my story had I had the kind of support, in a masculine energy that I may have needed younger. And again, I don't want to put down my dad at all, because I know he was doing the best that he could. He just didn't understand how to raise a teenage girl that wasn't his, biologically, I think. And it was frustrating for him. And he was working through his own demons at the time, right around in his 30s. Like that's when I think sometimes the shit hits the fan for us. We have to unpack a lot of the things that we've been stuffing away in our 20s, and, it kind of comes around at that time. And so I think my dad was just going through a ton. He was going through a lot, and he just didn't have the bandwidth to understand what I was going through. And so, we've since, really, we have a great relationship, and I love my dad to death. And I'm so grateful for all the things that he's done, to take me under his wing, a child that wasn't technically his. He looks at me no differently. It's like, it's just amazing. So I know it was hard for him. I know it was hard for me. And I think, through all that fighting, and then, through the toxic relationships and through the things that I went through, and then to find my fiance now, who has this beautifully balanced masculine energy, who gives that to me. It's like, when I am home, I am literally nothing of like a fighter, but like what you would think. And most people, I think, when they hang around me, are like, gosh, I get this all the time. It's like, you're such a calm energy. It's really hard for me to imagine you going into like an octagon and like fighting someone. I'm like, well, there's polarity to my personalities and to my energy. I said, but it's become so much more than a place to let out my aggressions and problems. Now it is about truly seeing what I'm capable of. And there's no pressure on the other side of it, because I've taken away my, definition of value via victory. Right now, it's just like, I just get to be this problem solver under pressure. And it's so fun for me. It's exhilarating. It's beautiful. And I look at it and say, like, any fight at this point could be my last. So I look at this with this gratitude that I still get to do this at this time in my life. I still get to fight these women ranked in the top 10 in the UFC. Like, that's crazy to me. And I just sit back and I think about it all. And I think about, and I appreciate that it is difficult for men to see women go into combat. I appreciate it. And I love it because like in the real world, like if we were, crossing the street or something, I know that your instinct would be to jump in front of the car to make sure that I don't, because you have a good masculine energy. Same thing with my fiance, and how difficult it must be. And I'll give my Johnny some real credit here, because he can't go in there and fight my fight for me, right? He can't glove up and protect me. He knows that I'm going into war and I could be seriously hurt. So what does he do on the back end? He just makes sure that I have all the tools that I need and the best support that I can throughout my whole camp to make sure that I can go out there and do that. It's like, I'm so grateful for that. I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah, you got a blessed life. You
do.
And you deserve it.
Yeah.
You deserve all of it because you earned it, right? You earned it. You deserve it. And you put out the goals and what you wanted to accomplish in your life. And all those things happened for you for a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was meant to be for you.
It was. And it's not, without a bunch of trial and error and hiccups. And God, I made a lot of mistakes. And I think I'll still continue to make a lot. But I look at it and say, I'm so grateful for the opportunities that I had to go through the hardships that I did, so that, that when I sit down and I have conversations with people on this podcast, and I named it Built for Growth for a reason.
Yep.
Because it is that. It is about the growth that you get from the adversity that you go through. And I think that's really what life is, what it comes down to.
Absolutely, 100%. It's absolutely what life's all about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, your beauty is not what you're doing in the octagon or as a professional athlete. It's what you're doing outside of it that makes it special.
Yeah.
Are you making a difference in the lives of other people?
Yeah.
That's the champion, right?
Yeah.
That's the champion.
That is. It is. It's one of those things that, you can never take too lightly. You can never just, I don't ever want to oversimplify those experiences and the value that they brought for me,
Right. Absolutely. I mean, that's what makes your life so beautiful, is that it wasn't perfect.
Yeah.
But you kept getting back up, back up.
Do you keep in touch with a lot of wrestlers?
Some of them I do. I've reached out. Tyler Meads. I just reached out to him recently, and you talk about a champion. He's one that I went to his work when he was in high school because I thought he was skipping practice. I mean, I was kind of relentless, and he actually was at work. But anyway, he works for Tacoma Police. He was in part of they did an ambush on police, and one of his good colleagues passed away.
Yeah.
And I got to believe that. Some of the things that he learned in the wrestling room, and he stepped forward when, and made it happen and protected the person that, got shot up and took care of him. And, that leadership and stuff that he learned in the room, and being resilient, and regardless of circumstance or regardless of situation, he was going to step forward. And so I'd say that's another example of a champion, right? That does it every day.
The mindset.
And let me tell you, he's going to kill me, but his record wasn't great. Wasn't great, but he's a champ.
Yeah.
He's a champ in my eyes. Yeah. Absolutely. 100%. Yeah.
Did you ever play team sports?
I did. Football.
Yeah.
Yeah, I played football. Yeah. A really good high school coach again, all-time winningest coach in the state of Washington. Incredible coach, super organized, super quiet, knows where to put the right people on the right spots. Was a genius at doing that. And I enjoyed it. A lot of my anger and stuff from my childhood, I put out on the football field. Yeah.
Did you put it out on the wrestling mat too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to not necessarily win. I wanted to win, but I wanted them to feel my pain. And I wish I wouldn't have done that. Yeah.
You wish you wouldn't have done it?
Yeah. I don't think, I wish I could have found a better way to deal with my anger. And my circumstance when I was younger, I just didn't know how to control it as well. And so I try to put pain in other people instead of myself that I felt.
Yeah. You didn't have any better tools though. So.
No.
What would you say to someone who maybe has or is going through a similar situation? What are the things that you've learned that can help cope? Are there specific tools or things that you use now when you deal with grief or anger, frustration, as opposed to trying to take it out on someone in sport or in relationship?
Yeah, I think first and foremost is that they're not alone, right? I think if you look at it, childhood experiences, adverse childhood experiences, they're not alone. There's a lot of them, right? You have some yourself. And so we got to look at the perspective of where they're at, give them some grace, give them some empathy, and then give them tools right? Okay, so if you're in a situation where you're starting to feel anxious, you're starting to feel angry. Okay, how are you going to reset from being in your amygdala, right, which is your emotion? How are you going to get to the prefrontal cortex so you can make a good decision? If you can't get to the prefrontal cortex, it's like having no cell phone service, right? So how do I teach them? So I teach them some skills, whether that's bouncing lacrosse balls or deep breaths, right? Meditation,
Yeah.
right? I read scripture,
Breathing.
all those. What?
Deep breaths. Is that what you said?
Yeah, right. Bunny breaths. That's what my granddaughter tells me to take. You know,
Right.
those kind of things, right? Drawing, coloring, right? Listen to music, going on a walk. Self-care is a big one for me. If your mind's strong, you're good, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I try to focus on those, making sure that kids, eat healthy, go to bed and get some good night rest, put away the social media, socialize with people. And we're not like talking character AI stuff.
Right.
We're talking about real people, not just sending a text, but trying to make connections with people, right? And then goal setting, right? We want to make sure we have goal setting. And then the self-care. It's really important. It's not about being in great shape. It's about how the effects have on your brain.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's what we work on.
I love that. That's beautiful. I know that when I was exiting my relationship that was, not good for me for the most part, one of the biggest healers for me was connecting with people, relationships around me that I had just kind of drifted into isolation. And I think maybe, there was probably, some manipulation on that part too, because I think, when somebody wants to keep you
Control.
in a certain place in life, in that box, they don't like opposition to that. So a lot of the people that would have maybe been around me to otherwise, say something different would have been seen as opposition and adverse to, the plan. And I can see it, I think I wanted so badly to be loved and be needed and be indispensable. I didn't want to be able to be left. I think that was my issues at the time. I wanted somebody to really want me, and I was at the point where I would sacrifice pretty much anything to just make sure that I was valuable in that way. And, I think when my learning, my biological father left when I was young, and then, my dad and I went through these times, and it is times when I felt abandoned, absolutely, by that male in my life. And so it just kind of, I think, set me up a lot in that way. But I'll tell you, when I finally left and I got out of it, one of the most healing things for me was reconnecting with friends and family. Yeah, I went like 2 weeks on a road trip, and I didn't know where I was going to go. I just got in my car, and I had a little dog with me, Scooter, and a duffel bag, and I just started driving. I went from Las Vegas to the coastline, and I drove up the coast. But along the way, I was looking for anybody that I could reconnect with. I think I was headed towards Washington because I'm like, well, that's where I'm from. And, I called up my great uncle Ed, who was the only member of my family, to my knowledge, that wrestled. And it was so funny because when I was wrestling, he was very opposed. He was actually officiating, a referee at the time. So you may, Ed Minotti, I don't know if you knew many of the referees or anything, but he was reffing at the time, and he absolutely refused to ref any male versus female matches.
Oh,
wouldn't do it. Got in trouble, we just wouldn't do it. But he has, that old school masculine mentality. I don't want to be out here officiating when this is not fair and she could get hurt. You don't want to be part of it. And it never bothered me because, again, I knew that it was coming from a good place. This wasn't about holding women down.
right.
It was about, I only want to see women wrestle women. I don't want to see women wrestle men. And so my uncle had no problem with women wrestling. He was like, wrestle. He's like, but you got to wrestle other women. I was like, Uncle Eddie, there's not enough women. This is the problem. It's like, it has to start somewhere. I was like, so if we can't wrestle the boys, it'll never happen. It's like, that's the problem that, you got to understand, this will never happen. Anyways, love him to death. And, I called him up and I had him connect me with like my great aunties. My grandma had passed already. She was the oldest of 8 kids. And I had lunch with every single one of my great aunts and uncles and, second cousins and people in that family that I had. And I'll tell you what, I think that really saved me in all of it. That and reconnecting with my relationship with God.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, first and foremost, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, God's got to be the one.
But
right?
I think the relationship with God came secondary. I don't think because I didn't know what I was looking for. Like sometimes when you're in that pitch black place, it's like you just see like this little pinhole of light and it's like, well, I could just hang out here until it's pitch black and then I don't know what's going to happen. Or I could just try to move now before all the light's gone in the room and go towards that. And I don't know what's on the other side. But for me, what was on the other side when I was seeking that little bit of light and it would get brighter every time I would make a connection. Right. And it's not that I never had a relationship with God. I've always had a relationship with God. It just wasn't very emphasized at that point. It wasn't very strong, So I started reconnecting with people, and through reconnecting with people, friendships, family, then my connection with God just naturally became stronger. Then my spiritual connection became stronger. And now it's just such a big part of, I feel like what guides me and also provides like a sense of relief. Like it's not all up to me, right? I don't have to control every single aspect of my life. Like that's very freeing.
Absolutely. Right? It is.
That song, Jesus Take the Wheel? I'm like, it's real.
Yes.
That's so powerful.
Is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do that every day. Every morning I wake up, read scripture, listen to scripture, meditate, all those things to make sure I'm right.
Yeah.
And clear the slate. But I think connection is a huge one, right? So I would say, advice to someone that barely can see it. And I also believe that in the darkness, there's always light.
There is.
Right? There's always light. Even if you can't see it, there's always going to be light. And so you got to remember that. But certainly connection is super important. What you put into your body, right? It's like an automobile, right? And we know the importance of putting good stuff in our system. We have to do that. And then the self-care exercise or whatever that is to make sure that it's good for the brain. So that's why you do it. It's not because of how you look afterwards. It's
good.
What it does.
BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor.
Yeah.
Yes, it's good. It's an antidepressant.
Yes, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, when we squeeze our muscles, we release like what they call them hope molecules.
Yep.
And there's literally, power. They're powerful. They are the body's natural antidepressant. So yes, exercise is absolutely, I think, imperative to mental health.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. So everyone should be in sports doing things.
Let me say not were you always, because I don't think that. I think I already know the answer to that. Most people, I think, who were raised, especially in maybe an unstable home condition, probably didn't have a good relationship much of a relationship with God. So when did that happen for you?
That's a great question. So I was probably about 4 years old, not much supervision. A couple of neighborhood kids actually went down to the lake. We were out at the lake and on the dock. It was wintertime, and I fell in the lake, and it's kind of a crazy story.
4?
Yeah, I was probably 4 years old. Fell in the lake.
My son is 4 years old,
and I was actually above the people that were at the lake, and there was like angels by me, and then they pulled me out, and I thought I was going to get in trouble, and my mom put me in the bathtub, and I knew that I had no religious background at all, but I knew there was something greater than myself. It started about 4 years old. And then what's crazy about it, Miesha, is my oldest daughter's got a master's degree in theology. And I'm like, who's my guardian angel? Who's my guardian angel? Because I have it in my mind. I know exactly what she looked like. Had it in my mind. And she has a book. It has all the saints in there. And I opened it up and I said, bam, there she is. You ready? Saint Germain cousin. She's the patron saint of those people that are abused and neglected.
Wow. Did you see her picture and be like, I knew it, and before you read anything?
I didn't read anything.
You're like, that's the one.
That's her. I looked at her picture and said, that's her. Every day I pray to her. It's her.
How does that evolve as a 4-year-old? You kind of understand that maybe there's something out there greater than you that is looking out for you, that's got to find some peace. But I mean, Do you begin the system of praying at that age? Were you like, is this something you were like?
No, I
what-
just knew that I had, that God was with me,
Yeah.
that I had a purpose, and that there was going to be hope regardless of the situation. Whatever happened at home, it wasn't going to diminish me. I still had hope. I could still get through this. Maybe built my resiliency maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
And then walk me through a little bit more, because I'm just curious on this. How did that evolve for you into, what your relationship looks like now? It's, spiritually.
Oh, spiritually, I'm really close to God, right? Yeah, all the thanks goes to him for sure. 100%. He's given me, right. He gave me more than I thought I could handle, but I could handle it. And he's blessed me in so many ways, blessed me with great people that I'm around, surrounded by great people. I get to work with great kids. In every day, it's just, it's beautiful, right? And one of my colleagues, one of our famous quotes is, and they don't like us to talk about it at school, but is to be God's answer to other people's prayers. That's what we're trying to do. Yeah, pretty close to it. They don't like it. If you looked in my classroom, you might find a cross or two.
Right. Well,
maybe. Yeah. It's my purpose.
It is. It's got to be difficult now, I think, for teachers to do the work that I think most teachers are, set out to want to do. I believe, most teachers are trying to make a difference in these young kids' lives, right? For the better. Like they want that. And it's, I don't know. I just don't think it's a job that you do unless you have a love for it. Does that make sense? And the kids.
Absolutely. I know I was kind of nervous, I've been teaching for 33 years, wondering, I feel like I've worked yet. I'm just here mentoring kids, working with them, trying to get them the best they can be. It's not really a job to me. It's just like a thing I do. I just love it, right? I'm just trying to serve God in that capacity.
That's so good. Did your relationship with God evolve? Is there like another pivotal moment where it's like it went from, in the background to the foreground? Was there a moment when?
Yeah, when I was, I had a moment when I was like in 52 or something like that. I can't remember. I was driving home. We had a conversation, and I had like a flashback and a traumatic event, that happened in my life. And so it was dark for a moment, right? And I had to get my life. I had to figure out where I'm going and what I'm doing, and which is really weird because I'm super disciplined and super organized in how I want to do things, and my mind just, much like your journey, was a little hard spot for me from my childhood, and so I worked through it, right? People to help you and surround yourself with people that can help you get better than where you were.
Yeah.
And then through that, of course, just because I was in that spot doesn't mean God's away, right?
Yeah.
A lot of times I'll go in the pool and swim a couple miles and then get out and sit in the sauna for 36 minutes and look at the crack and think about you trying to suck out of that. And I know I'm so dehydrated in there that when I get in the shower, a cold shower, I know that when I close my eyes, I can see the light of God. So it's always going to be better. I can make it another 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 15 minutes and just keep going.
Or however long you need to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gosh, so many things I didn't know about you. This was everything that I had hoped it would be. Just sit down with you, more than 20 years later after, first having, those interactions with you and you being so hard and so driven and, kind of stoic and purposeful in all of your, your presence. But never really having a glimpse behind, this.
Behind the curtain.
Yeah, behind the curtain, and behind this man that was just such a starting point. It was a starting point for me in my career. And I have absolutely no reservation saying that if I didn't go out for wrestling and if it hadn't been so challenging, I would not be where I am today. That's for sure. I could say that. I don't think I even would have fought because I would have been afraid that I didn't have what it takes. But no, that first year of wrestling, I was never afraid that I didn't have what it takes ever again. And I never will be because I know that I do. And whatever it is, like I can get through it because I've proved that to myself. Over and over and over again. And so, again, I can't thank you enough, and I can't tell you how much that has influenced my life because, clearly I stand here today still doing what I love, still reflecting on those days back in wrestling that forged the character and proved it. You know, they proved it. Those moments on the mat, nobody could say that I wasn't there, that I wasn't giving my best, that I wasn't working my hardest. You know, I showed up every day determined to be 1% better than I was the day before. And man, I just say thank you. And I'm just so grateful to sit down and have this conversation with you today, because I've wondered so many of these things, and it's great for me to get the clarification. Thank you for being so open and candid and giving me your perspective.
Yeah, I'm just so blessed. I just so thankful that you gave me the opportunity to just come and see you. Whatever platform you're in, I'll always be a fan, right? It didn't matter what you ever chose to do or what direction you would take. I just want you to know how much I love you and care about you, and always have. And I wish, in retrospect, I probably should have pulled you aside and said how much I loved you when you were a kid. I just didn't want to. I just wanted to make sure that you could hit the target, whatever that was going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this was great, and this definitely hit the target today. So thank you, and I can't wait to continue expanding on everything. I don't feel like this is a stopping point. This was just another point for us to reconnect. And now you're still up in Washington, right?
Yeah.
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 What part? We live in
Stillicum, a little town called Stillicum.
Oh yeah. I know where Stillicum is.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope to see you.
You definitely will. I will let you know when I'm back up there again. Actually, my 20th reunion is coming up this summer.
Oh, there you go.
So
time flies, doesn't it?
So I'll be back up there at least in August, and we'll have to reconnect and continue. I want you to meet my fiance and my kids.
Oh, absolutely.
They're 6 and 4. They're both wrestling.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I'd love to meet them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So great. Well, thank you again today. This was really rewarding, and I know everybody's going to enjoy this one.
All right.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks.